Vape Politics Radio, covering calls to action all around the country, breaking industry news, all things FDA, event coverage, and answering your questions here at home and abroad. Make sure you follow us on Facebook at facebook.vapepolitics.com and go over and give our Twitter a follow at twitter.vapepolitics.com. Hello everybody and welcome to Vape Politics Radio, episode 6. This week we have a lot to cover. Greg Gutfeld, previously from The Five, now has his own talk show, which means he can talk about electronic cigarettes whenever he wants, and this week, oh, he does. Greg Gutfeld will be debating a doctor on the harms of electronic cigarettes. Congress fighting against the FDA. We've brought this up before, but now we have legitimate information on the bill that is being pushed forward, and it is a beautiful sight to see Congress actually going out of their way to protect the vapor industry from the deeming regulations of the FDA. And the Californian Vapers defeated Senate Bill 140. That was a sight to behold, and we'll be hearing some clips from that and talking about that as well. All this and more on Vape Politics Radio. All right, first up, we're going to hear from Greg Gutfeld as he debates Dr. Radcliffe on electronic cigarettes. Trust me, guys, you're going to love this one.
Dear American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, you've been very, very bad. When both my parents died, they had cancer. Yet, like an idiot, I smoked. I knew it was a mistake, but I did it anyway. I tried to quit. I even tried hypnosis, but that's for magic routines at casinos. And I tried gums and patches, but that just made me want to find the real thing. Then I found e-cigarettes. They helped me quit the real cigarettes. With e-cigarettes, I could go through all the motions of smoking without inhaling all the cancer-causing things like tar. I went from smoking 10 cigarettes a day to 10 cigs a year. I realized that if e-cigs were around maybe 50 years ago, people I love would be alive today. Which is why I'm disappointed in you, American Cancer Society Action Network, because you're hailing a new law that will limit e-cigs in all places that do not allow smoking. You're conflating a device with its evil arch enemy. And that's weird, controlling something that rids actual smoking and then saying it's as bad as smoking when it's clearly not. It's potentially a dramatic advancement in fighting cancer, and a cancer organization is now demonizing it without hesitation. It's like firemen coming out against water or kittens coming out against yarn. Now, I invited you to come on my show to explain this to me, and you refused. Why? Either you're cowards or knew you didn't have the facts, or perhaps both. Either way, I have to go now and debate a real doctor who actually had the guts to show up. Sincerely, Greg. Nobody writes letters anymore. Joining me now is the very brave Dr. Nina Radcliffe, a practicing physician, much like me. First off, I have to ask you, Dr. Radcliffe, you've written some from fairly critical pieces on e-cigs. Why do you hate them? That's like hating Santa Claus and babies and unicorns. They've done so much good.
Well, no, safer does not mean safe, and less dangerous does not mean not dangerous. And what I tell my patients when they ask me about it, would they rather jump off of a 100-foot building or a 50-foot building? The 50-foot one would probably be a little bit safer, but it's still not a good idea in the first place.
Well, if I used your metaphor, it'd be more like jumping off a 100-foot building and a 1-foot building.
Because
there's no toxins. There's no toxins. There's no tar. And also, in terms of secondhand smoke, there's no combustible stuff coming out of the vapor, so you're not hurting anybody.
Well, no, disagree. And I do agree with you. There are less chemicals. There are less toxins. But again, it doesn't mean that it's safe for you to use. And first of all, nicotine.
How do you know that?
We do know that because studies have shown.
What studies?
Now, lots of studies.
Be specific, Dr. Radcliffe.
Well, first of all, it does contain nicotine. And we do know that nicotine is highly addictive and it's dangerous.
But wait a second. Okay, exercise is addictive, caffeine's addictive. That doesn't make it deadly. There are no cardiovascular risks from nicotine.
There is absolutely cardiovascular risk. First of all, it raises your heart rate by 5 to 10 beats per every minute. And if you're using it,
does exercise.
Yes, but it's in a different form or fashion. This is a chemical way of doing it. It increases your blood pressure and it causes vasoconstriction of your heart vessels. So somebody who already has plaques or atherosclerosis, now you're constricting and you're getting less oxygen to your heart. So I disagree with you completely. And we do have to sit there and say that nicotine is not a liquid by nature. What it is it's a solid. In order to be liquid, it has to be in a solvent. What they're using is propylene glycol, and that's used in antiperspirants. They're used in soap. It's used in cosmetics.
So they're safe.
No,
they're used in soap. They're obviously safe.
You're putting on your body versus inhaling into your lungs.
But it's a
very different.
But I mean, you could say that about anything. You could say that certain things are toxic, but they're not toxic at certain levels. I get the feeling that the negativity towards e-cigarettes is a feeling because it looks like smoking. It's like it's like there's this idea that it's confusing people when you see somebody having an e-cigarette. It looks like a real cigarette, and that upsets them. It's like being mad at somebody drinking bottled water because it looks like vodka.
Well, the problem is that the popularity is growing faster than the medical knowledge is coming in. What we do know is that the secondhand smoke that is out there contains chromium. That's not even in regular traditional cigarettes. It contains.
You're kidding me. There's no research that shows secondhand smoke damage from an e-cig.
It absolutely does. There's lots of research. They've done it on mice. They show that there's
on mice.
They've done it on mice, and that's how we start all of that. But this is the problem, is when it comes to things like cancer, it takes years for them to be exposed. We have not had that time to carefully evaluate it. And let me say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on us. And what we're worried about as medical professionals and as people who do look out for the interest is how it'll affect people down the road. And our biggest concern, adults can make their decisions. They can have the facts. They can do that. But they can't endanger others in terms of the secondhand smoke.
There's no secondhand smoke.
There is absolutely.
There is none. There's no smoke. It's a vapor. Number one, and also this idea that you don't know. Once you find out it's safe, are you going to decide, could come out and apologize and say it was a mistake?
I will be the first one, but I doubt I will be doing that. And this is my concern, is that children, teenagers in Hawaii.
It's the kids.
It is the kids. It is absolutely about the kids.
Well, okay.
We have to protect them.
There is research that shows that that kids are using vaping devices, but it's replacing tobacco. They're not seeing vaping go up and tobacco go up. They're seeing vaping go up and tobacco go down. Tell me you can't see that, but that is a benefit, that you're getting them off cigarettes and on vaping. And by the way, vaping is easier to get off than cigarettes. So you're getting them from something highly addictive to something less addictive, to an opportunity to completely quit, which has happened to me.
Well, I disagree with you on many levels, but let me just say, in Hawaii, they just raised the smoking age to 21 because 9th graders and 10th graders, we're talking about 13, 14, and 15-year-olds, 29% have used electronic cigarettes and 19% use them regularly. Nicotine does affect growing brains. We cannot sit there and let our kids do this.
So does caffeine.
And it may be a gateway.
Caffeine.
It may also be a gateway drug.
I always know I'm winning an argument when you use the gateway argument. Everything's always a gateway.
Well, the studies have shown.
No, actually, cigarettes are a gateway to vaping, and then vaping is a gateway to not smoking at all because they lower the concentrations of nicotine.
They actually don't. The amount of nicotine that's delivered, or what they say is the target, is many times more than what it is. And
at the beginning, and then they decrease it.
Possibly. But are you an e-cigarette smoker?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and how long have you been on?
Let's see. I would say 18 months. 18 months.
So, but the goal was to bridge from smoking to this to nothing.
Yeah.
But you're 18 months out.
Yeah, and I smoke maybe one e-cig a week.
Okay.
And when I smoke it, I actually enjoy it knowing that it's dramatically healthier. Like your metaphor, like jumping off a building, doesn't make any sense because you're actually, if you wanted somebody who smokes a pack a day to do an e-cig, of course you'd want them to do it because there's no tobacco. Well, and nicotine compared to the tar is nothing in terms of harm.
Well, formaldehyde is something. Formaldehyde is used to preserve dead bodies.
And, well,
antifreeze.
That's a fear tactic. Formaldehyde is used in a lot of things.
Yes.
And it's used in a tiny, minuscule amount. By the way, I agree with you. There should be regulation, but there should be regulation perhaps about age and maybe about packaging so people can't open it.
Well, there's an 18-month-old child who drank the nicotine and she passed away.
I read about that. That's one thing. And by the way, a lot of people drink cleaning products. That's a problem.
I eat glue.
You do eat glue. Michael, your head's going to explode.
I mean, that has nothing to do with e-cigarettes, the fact that somebody drank this and died. It has to do with bad parenting.
We'll talk later about that.
No, I mean, it has to do with bad parenting. There's a lot of things that kids can drink and die. But would you, as a doctor, if a patient comes to you and says, I have two options here, I'm going to smoke cigarettes or I'm going to smoke e-cigarettes, would you say to them you should smoke e-cigarettes?
Well, and that's what puts us in a conundrum because we cannot sit there and say, yes, go for it, because we do know that there are dangers for it, and we do not want to sit there.
But it's better for you, is it not?
You can't say better. It might be safer in certain levels.
Well, safer, yes.
But formaldehyde, antifreeze, nitrosamines, those have been shown to cause cancer. Nicotine is a very addictive thing.
I think the inclination from research is good, but the inclination to treat it like cigarettes is harmful and could cause people to keep smoking. I got to go. Excellent, and thank you for coming and putting up with us.
The studies have shown, I'm not sure if you caught that, but the studies have shown, they've most definitely shown something? I'm confused because Dr. Radcliffe didn't cite any of her studies that she was mentioning or any of the statistics that she brought up. The problem with politics today is we throw around information like it's fact. The thing is, fact has sources. Fact has background. Dr. Konstantinos Farsalinos has facts. He has science. He has background. And the fact that she can run around on talk shows and say, well, the studies have shown that there are cardiovascular risks, or the studies have shown that nicotine is deadly, and the studies have shown that formaldehyde is in all e-cigarettes. Are you kidding me? Really? Do some research. You got your doctorate for a very good reason. Now put it to use. We're going to move on before I pop a blood vessel and talk about some good news. Congrats to Greg. Always a great job. He's really a good public figure for us to have. I wish he would work on a terminology a little bit more, but hey, he'll get it down. Anyway, we're going to move on. The vaping industry faces an uphill battle. We always have, and we will for the foreseeable future, but every once in a while, there's a glimmer of hope. There's a moment that happens where we all join together and just have to scream, we can do this. And that happened twice. But the first one that we're going to talk about is Congress. Now, I said this last week, and it sounded crazy when I said it then. It sounds crazy when I'm saying it now, but this is happening, folks, and I am super excited to share this information with you. Congress moves forward with their plan to protect the electronic cigarette industry. I will repeat because, again, it sounds crazy. Congress moves forward with their plan to protect the electronic cigarette industry. According to Rebecca Shabad from thehill.com, Republicans blocked an amendment Wednesday that would have removed a provision from a spending bill exempting electronic cigarettes and other products from the Food and Drug Administration pre-market review process. Now, what that means is there is a spending bill in the Appropriations Committee that will limit funding to the FDA and their pre-market review process. Basically, in layman terms, what it's going to do is it's going to force the FDA to do a couple things. First of which is change the grandfather date. The date that Congress is pushing them to shoot for is 2 years after the effective date of the regulations. So even though the regulations haven't dropped yet, when they do, we would have 2 years of innovation protected under the grandfather clause. Now, moving forward, the GOP appropriators rejected the proposal to strike the bill's language in a 26-23 vote. Representative Nita Lowry, a Democrat from New York, offered the amendment, called the rider objectionable, and said she's shocked at its inclusion in the bill. And what that means right there is that she's shocked that they're including the e-cigarette language in this spending bill. She goes on to say, this bill would allow them to stay on the market, them being electronic cigarettes, without an FDA pre-market review and open the door for similar products to avoid FDA review down the road. End quote. The bill, which would fund the Department of Agriculture and the FDA, would make it more difficult for the FDA to regulate electronic cigarettes, which contain nicotine. Well, I'll correct you right there. Not all electronic cigarettes contain nicotine. In fact, a very large group of vapers go all the way down to zero, and some of them even quit altogether. But I will continue. The FDA announced plans in April 2014 to issue new rules for e-cigarettes that would force manufacturers to create new health warning labels and ban sales to people who are under the age of 18. We agree with you, FDA. We are in complete agreement with those two things. We need warning labels, and we need to regulate so that no one under the age of 18 can legally walk into a vape shop or purchase online. Those are two things we highly agree with you on. And we've discussed that with the Vape for Youth conversations and what happened with Mitch Zeller and that group of manufacturers almost a month and a half ago. We agree. However, what we don't agree with is you regulating the entire industry out of existence. Continuing on, in 2009, Congress passed a law that gave the FDA the authority to regulate all tobacco products it believes should receive oversight. Under the rules, which are expected to be finished this summer, e-cigarette manufacturers would only be allowed to begin marketing their products after a lengthy review process. Public health groups have expressed concern that the bills language wouldn't protect children from these products. Okay, guys. Okay. It's all about the children. When you don't have a solid argument, what do you use as a patsy? The children. It's all about the kids, guys. We have to protect the kids. So here's an idea. Make sure that all e-liquid is properly labeled, has a professional, non-cartoony, non-child appealing label. Make sure that it has a warning on it and put a child-proof cap on it, and boom, problem solved. This is a quote from Lowy, as we discussed earlier, the representative from New York. Many of these products are aimed at children, including a substantial number of over 7,000 flavors of e-cigarettes, bubblegum, gummy bears, Swedish fish. I will use a very simple argument real quick, and then we'll move on, because we do not need to spend an entire segment talking about the fact that Democrats, well, specifically this representative, are going to come up and say, bubblegum, gummy bears, Swedish fish, oh no, the children. I will say this. Adults like flavors too. That is all I'm going to say. Adults like flavors too. Now, if we market this correctly, specifically to adults, and we put the child-resistant caps on there, and we put the warning labels on there, there shouldn't be a problem with this. Your argument is moot. And I quote from Representative Andy Harris, a Republican. He said, e-cigarettes are not really smoking. I think most people realize that they are less dangerous than cigarettes, and yet we're subjecting them to a higher level of regulation. End quote. Cynthia Carbanas said on Twitter, and I quote, the House Appropriations Committee approves bill changing the FDA grandfather date. 23-26 vote. Big win for vaping, but more work to do. Now I will tell you what Bill Funderburk from the Georgia Smoke-Free Association had to say about this new news that was coming out. And I quote, some of us may have difficulty accepting this, but it appears on the national level the Republicans are on our side, end quote. And again, that was Bill Funderburk from the Georgia Smoke-Free Association. This is good news, guys. Now, of course, this is just coming out of committee. It's going to take a while. It's going to have to go to the House. It's going to have to, once it's approved by the House, go over to the Senate, back to the House, back to the Senate, amendments, over to the White House, eventually, maybe to get signed. So it's a long uphill battle that we're about to be a part of, but it is the only battle that can save us from the grandfather date issue that the FDA is going to impose on us. We're going to move forward onto our next segment to California, where some very good news is happening over there as well. I guess the good news is just going to keep rolling in. In case you didn't know, yesterday, the Californian Vapers, along with SFATA and the AVA, decimated Senate Bill 140. They stopped it in its tracks, so much so that the leader behind the bill, Senator Mark Leno, pitched a little fit. Literally. I kid you not, I watched it happen live, and I will read for you everything that went down yesterday, according to the LA Times. Patrick McKeevy from the LA Times said the following. State Senator Mark Leno dropped a bill Wednesday that would have regulated electronic cigarettes after it was gutted by an assembly panel to no longer treat vaping as tobacco products, facing the same restrictions as cigarettes. After the Assembly Governmental Organizational Committee voted 11-3 to approve a hostile amendment to the bill, Leno told the panel that he was walking away from it. And I quote, on behalf of the next generation of Californians who will become addicted to nicotine as a result of your vote, Leno said his sponsors of the bill, including the American Lung Association, the American Cancer Society, also were withdrawing their support from the watered-down measure, which was held in committee as a result. He went on to say, I no longer believe in it. None of my sponsors believe in it, Leno said. I disassociate myself from it. It's a very dangerous bill now. End quote. I just have to poke a hole in something real quick. Yesterday, Mark Leno said that the whole point behind the bill was to protect the children and that no vaping businesses would be harmed by it. So let me ask you a question. When an amendment stopped the bill from declaring vaping as tobacco products, but still would have regulated to the point where it protects the children, why would he disassociate himself from the bill unless the entire goal of the bill had nothing to do with public health or the children? It had to do with classifying e-cigarettes as a tobacco product so that further down the road, sin taxes will be much easier to implement. This had nothing to do with the children. I can say that. I said this on Twitter yesterday, and not one person disagreed with me. I cannot believe that you would spend 20 minutes going on and on about the children and how this bill will protect the children, and then the moment that the amendment that you needed not to go through goes through, and all that it does is change the fact that vapor products should not be defined as tobacco products, you walk away from the bill, you throw the bill down and disassociate yourself from it. I no longer believe in it. None of my sponsors believe in it. That's because your sponsors have connections to who? Big pharma, big tobacco. The truth of the matter here is that we did it. We can celebrate because we as the Vapers did it. United, we stand. It's beautiful. He said removing a provision designating e-cigarettes as tobacco products allows vaping devices to manufacture to continue to market their products to minors. You're full of it. 5 Democrats voted with Republicans for the amendment. See, coming across the aisle to do something smart. 5 Democrats voted with Republicans for the amendment, which was sought by the electronic cigarette industry. Assemblyman Henry Pereira argued for the amendment, saying that without it, the law would harm those who make and sell electronic cigarettes that do not use the nicotine. Of course, it would harm the people who sell electronic cigarettes, period. As declaring it a tobacco product, you open up the door to all sorts of things. You open up the door for more harmful legislation. You open up the door for sin taxes. You open up the door for counties and commissions to decimate vaping everywhere, all throughout California. So the moment that we took that away from you, you disassociate yourself from the bill. He went on to say, we have a whole group of individuals who will get caught up in this political bureaucratic thing that do not have to. I don't want there to be collateral damage for some folks. Businesses would die. Along the line, businesses would die. And that's something that Mark Leno said wouldn't happen. He said that we were being ridiculous to think that business would be hurt. He went on to say that we are marketing to children, that the vape shops were marketing to children, and that all this little bill did was to protect the children. No, there's always an agenda. We're not stupid. Assemblyman Jim Cooper, a Democrat from Elk Grove, said he was disappointed that the panel made the bill toothless. It didn't make the bill toothless. It made the bill correct. It's a big win. We need to stop looking at the negative of this and stop giving Mark Leno more credit than he's actually worth. We need to focus on the positives here. Greg Connolly, Stefan Didak, people who went out there and they kicked ass. They took names and they protected vaping in California. And for that, I commend everyone who went. I commend every vape shop owner who stood up and said, on behalf of me, my business, and my employees, I strongly oppose this bill. It was a beautiful thing, and I'm happy to say this is a week of wins. Greg Gutfeld, Congress, California, all 3 big wins. I'm just pleased. I was sitting in my car yesterday as I was thinking about the episode, and I thought to myself, what does Vape Politics do? And the answer is we provide information. But another thing we do is that we celebrate victory, and we are humble in defeat, and there will be defeat. We can't just pretend that just because we have a couple good days that the bad days aren't coming. They are. The FDA is still coming. And we will be regulated. But if Congress goes through with this bill, we will be protected. I'm very excited to see what happens in the future when it comes to vaping and vaping advocacy. I commend everyone in California who did their darndest to make sure that that bill stayed put. Very proud of everyone involved. For everyone here at the Vape Politics team, I'm Noah Richardson signing off. Have a great weekend.